Born and raised on a picturesque and humble farm in Nebraska, Lucy emerged as a shining star among her 6 younger siblings. Life there was simple but filled with difficulties and challenges. She was the eldest of a boisterous and energetic group of children, each with their unique personality, but Lucy stood out. There was something in her spirit, a burning flame of determination and resilience that made her noticeable. Her parents, Rose and Hank, were modest people who spent their days from sunrise to sunset among the cornfields and cattle pens. Rose, with her calloused hands and warm smile, always found time to care for the children and make the house a cozy home despite its simplicity. Hank, a man of few words but meaningful actions, dedicated every drop of sweat to keep the farm running and put food on the table. Both of them worked tirelessly, not for themselves, but for their children. They dreamed of a future where their children wouldn't have to go through the same challenges they faced. They had a vision, a dream nurtured in their hearts. They wanted their children to have the chance to live in the sparkling metropolis of New York City, where opportunities seemed endless. They dreamed that their children could study in good schools and universities, have successful careers, and live prosperous lives that were beyond their reach. This dream was the fuel that kept Rose and Hank working through the long hot days and cold nights of Nebraska. It was the promise of a better future for their children that lit up their tired faces at the end of each day. And Lucy, in her young wisdom, understood this. She grasped the love and sacrifice of her parents, and it only made the flame within her burn stronger. Amidst the simplicity of her life in the countryside, Lucy discovered an overwhelming passion that took her by surprise. Samuel, the son of the wealthy local farmer, was the embodiment of forbidden desires, the heir to a fortune who knew nothing of the toil in the fields or the value of hard-earned dollars. He had eyes as blue as the summer sky and a smile that made Lucy's heart race. Against all odds, Samuel also fell in love with Lucy. "Lucy," he said one day as they lay on the grass beneath the starring Nebraska sky, "you are like the sun. You shine so brightly that you illuminate everything around you. I love you, Lucy." "I love you, Samuel," Lucy responded, her heart pounding in her chest. "But our families will never accept this." "Then let's fight together," Samuel said, holding her hand. "Let's prove that our love is stronger than any prejudice." And so they chose to live their love, a decision that sent shockwaves through their respective families. The news of their relationship caused a scandal. After all, the eldest daughter of a rural working-class family and the son of the wealthiest farmer in the region, it seemed like the plot of a romance novel. But it was their reality, and despite the disapproval from their families and the disapproving glances from their neighbors, Lucy and Samuel remained steadfast. Their love for each other was like an unquenchable flame, burning brightly despite the headwinds. Because for them, love was not a matter of convenience or social status. It was a matter of the heart, and they were willing to fight for it no matter what. The year Lucy turned 18 brought with it a severe drought that plagued Nebraska. The once green sea of cornfields had turned brown and parched, the cattle grew thin, and the water wells ran dry. Rose and Hank faced challenging times, their expressions laden with worry and exhaustion. Lucy, who had never witnessed such adversity before, felt a heaviness in her heart seeing her parents struggle. One day, as she watched Hank trying to mend a broken fence under the scorching sun, she made a decision. "Hank," Lucy said, approaching her father with a determination he had never seen before, "I'm going to New York City." Hank stopped what he was doing and looked at Lucy, surprised. "What? Why?" "Because I want to help. I want to give you a better life, and I want to fulfill the dream you have for us, your children," Lucy said, her voice firm despite the trembling in her heart. Hank looked at Lucy, his gaze softening. He knew he couldn't stop her. She was as stubborn and determined as he was. "And Samuel?" he asked, knowing that her decision also meant leaving her beloved behind. "I have to try to forget him," she said, a solitary tear streaming down her face. And so Lucy made a decision that would change her life forever. She would go to New York City, fulfill her parents' dream, and somehow try to forget Samuel. The life she knew was about to change drastically, but Lucy was ready to face whatever came her way because she knew she was doing it out of love for her parents and love for herself. Lucy arrived in bustling New York City with a heart full of hope and a suitcase full of dreams. The city was a whirlwind of lights, sounds, and people so different from the tranquil countryside of Nebraska. However, amidst the chaos, Lucy found a safe haven, a small clothing store in the heart of the Lower East Side. The store was a mix of a workshop and a boutique, a place where colorful fabrics and creative designs came to life. The owner, Agnes, was an elderly woman with bright eyes and a gentle smile. She saw something special in Lucy from the moment she laid eyes on her. "You seem to have an eye for fashion," Agnes remarked, watching Lucy flip through a fashion sketchbook. "Have you ever considered working with clothes?" Lucy looked at Agnes, surprised. "I've always liked clothes, but I never thought of making a career out of it." "Well, maybe it's time for you to start considering it," Agnes said with a smile. "I need an assistant in the store, and you seem to have the right knack for it. What do you think?" "I would love to," Lucy replied, her heart beating with excitement. "But I don't have a place to live." Agnes waved her hand as if it was no big deal. "I have a small room in the back of the factory. It's nothing fancy, but it's clean and cozy. You can stay there while you look for something better." And so Lucy began a new life in New York City. She worked in the store during the day and slept in a small room at the back of the factory at night. It was a humble beginning, but it was hers, and for Lucy, that was all that mattered. In New York City, Lucy immersed herself in the new life she had chosen. During the day, she dedicated herself to work in Agnes' store, assisting customers, organizing shelves, and learning the art of sewing. At night, she studied under the dim light of the small room at the back of the store, her fashion books spread around her. At first, sewing was a challenge. Threads tangled, needles broke, and fabrics refused to cooperate. But Lucy was determined. She spent hours practicing, her hands moving more skillfully with each passing day. Gradually, Lucy fell in love with the profession. There was something magical about turning a piece of fabric into a garment, about seeing a design come to life. She began experimenting with her own designs, sketching ideas in a notebook she carried with her. The first time Lucy saw one of her garments in the store's display window, she felt a wave of pride. The piece was simple, a classic cut blue dress. But it was hers. She had designed it, cut it, and sewn it. And when a customer purchased the dress, Lucy knew she had found her calling. Over time, Lucy became more than just a salesperson or seamstress. She became a fashion designer, creating unique pieces that reflected her talent and passion. The small-town girl who dreamed of the big city had found her place in the world of New York City fashion, and she couldn't be happier. As the years went by and Lucy established herself in the New York City fashion industry, thoughts of her family in Nebraska never left her mind. Homesickness was a constant companion, and the success Lucy was experiencing only intensified her desire to share that joy with her parents and siblings. One day, as Lucy looked at the skyscrapers of New York City, she made a decision. Picking up the phone, she dialed the familiar number of the home in Nebraska. "Hello, Mom, it's Lucy," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. A few weeks later, Lucy's parents and her siblings arrived at JFK Airport, their eyes wide with the bustling city. Lucy greeted them with a tight hug, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome to your new home," Lucy said, leading them to the spacious apartment she had rented for them in Brooklyn. The living room was cozy, the bedrooms were spacious, and the kitchen was modern. It was a home that Lucy could never have imagined providing for her family when she was just a dreamy girl in Nebraska. Lucy's parents looked around in disbelief. "Lucy," her mother said, her voice choked with emotion, "did you do all of this?" Lucy nodded, her heart filled with gratitude. "Yes, Mom, and it's all thanks to you and Dad. You always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Now it's my turn to take care of you." And so Lucy managed to fulfill a dream she never thought possible, bringing her family to New York City and giving them a life they could never have imagined in Nebraska. She knew the road ahead would still be challenging, but with her family by her side, Lucy knew she could face anything. Years later, Lucy was in a small cafe in Soho, sipping a cappuccino while flipping through a fashion book when she saw him for the first time. Louis was sitting a few tables away, reading a newspaper with a serious expression on his face. Something about him reminded her of Samuel, her first love, and she couldn't help but look. When Louis looked up and saw Lucy watching him, a smile spread across his face. He stood up to approach her. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Louis. I noticed you were looking at me and thought I'd come over and introduce myself." Lucy blushed and shook Louis's hand. "I'm Lucy," she replied. "Sorry for staring. It's just that you remind me of someone I knew a long time ago." From that moment on, they talked for hours, sharing stories, laughing, and getting to know each other. The connection between Lucy and Louis was instant and deep. In no time, they began dating and fell deeply in love with each other. Their relationship was passionate and intense, and Lucy felt grateful to have found someone who understood her so well. Sometimes she wondered if Louis was the reincarnation of Samuel, sent back into her life to fill the void he had left behind. Together, Lucy and Louis faced the ups and downs of life, supporting each other in their times of need. And while Lucy never forgot Samuel, her first love, she knew that her heart now belonged to Louis, the man who loved and understood her like no other. On a cold winter afternoon, Lucy was in the studio working on a new design when Agnes, the owner of the store and workshop, entered the room with a serious look on her face. The older woman approached Lucy, her hands holding a thick envelope. "Lucy," Agnes began, her tone softer than usual, "I'm thinking of retiring. It's been many years in this business, and honestly, I think it's time for me to enjoy life while I still can." Lucy looked at Agnes, surprised. "But Agnes, what will happen to the store?" Agnes smiled, extending the envelope to Lucy. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I'm considering selling the store and the workshop, and I want to offer you the first opportunity to purchase it." Lucy was stunned. "Agnes, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything now," Agnes replied. "Just think about it. I know you, Lucy. You're talented, passionate, and above all, you have the heart for this. I think you're the right person to carry on the legacy of this store." With Louis's support, Lucy decided to accept Agnes's offer. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and she knew that if she let it pass, she might regret it for the rest of her life. Soon after finalizing the deal with Agnes, Lucy and Louis announced their engagement. It was a moment of celebration and joy, a new phase that promised to bring even more success and happiness to Lucy's life. It was a spring morning when Lucy received the news. Her brother's phone call, his muffled and trembling voice, unfolded the terrible reality before her. Her beloved mother, Rose, had passed away. A wave of sadness engulfed Lucy, the raw and intense pain piercing her heart like a knife. The family was mourning the loss of their matriarch, sending shockwaves through all of them. But amidst her grief, Lucy remembered her mother's words spoken with tenderness and hope. "I want to see you happy, Lucy. I want to see you married and loved." Despite the pain, Lucy knew she had to honor her mother's wish. On a beautiful autumn afternoon, Lucy walked down the aisle dressed in a gown she had created herself, Louis waiting for her with tears in his eyes. The ceremony was beautiful and poignant. There was an empty chair in the front row, a red rose resting on the seat, symbolizing Rose's presence. Lucy missed her mother intensely, but in her heart, she knew Rose was there, watching and blessing her union with Louis. The wedding was, in many ways, a reflection of Lucy herself, full of love, perseverance, and a silent strength that spoke volumes. Even in the midst of sorrow, she found a reason to celebrate, to love, and to move forward, just as her mother would have wished. Just a few months after Lucy's wedding, a new storm struck the family. Hank, Lucy's kind and hard-working father, passed away. It was as if a part of him had gone with Rose, and he simply couldn't bear the pain of living without her. Lucy received the news from one of her brothers, his voice trembling on the other end of the line. "Lucy, it's Dad. He's gone." The words hit Lucy like a punch in the gut, leaving her breathless. Hank's death was a harsh blow to all of them. The family gathered once again, this time to bid farewell to the patriarch. Despite the sadness that enveloped the family, they found solace in stories and memories of Hank, his infectious laughter and his unconditional love for all of them. During the funeral, Lucy approached her father's casket, her eyes filled with tears. "Dad," she whispered, her words meant for him alone. "I miss you so much, but I promise I will carry on. I will make you and Mom proud. I love you." The loss of her parents in such a short span of time was an almost unbearable pain for Lucy. But amidst the grief, she found strength in her memories of them and in the promise she made to her father. She would carry on, not just for herself, but for Rose and Hank as well. Even amidst the sorrow of losing her parents, Lucy persisted. She immersed herself in her work, channeling her pain into unmatched inspiration. The small clothing store grew and evolved into a renowned brand, with Lucy becoming a recognized fashion designer across the country. Louis, always by her side, was her pillar of support. He assisted her in the business, but he also stood firm at home, giving Lucy the space she needed to create. Together, they built a life of luxury, living in a beautiful home in Manhattan with everything they could dream of. Amidst all this success, two precious gifts came their way: son Eric and daughter Brielle. Eric, with his blue eyes and mischievous smile, and Brielle, with her golden curls and infectious laughter. Lucy and Louis dedicated themselves to giving their children everything they themselves never had: quality education, comfort, and, above all, unconditional love. Unfortunately, as time went on, the privileges granted to their children had an adverse effect. Eric and Brielle grew up surrounded by luxury and comfort, gradually becoming entitled and spoiled. They had everything they desired but seemed to not appreciate things in the way Lucy and Louis had hoped. "I just wish they understood the value of things," Lucy confessed one night as she watched their children play in the living room surrounded by expensive toys. "They're still young, Lucy. There's still time for them to learn," Louis reassured. Lucy nodded, but in her heart, she couldn't help but worry. She wondered if, in trying to give their children everything she never had, she had unintentionally deprived them of something far more valuable, an understanding of the true worth of things. Time continued to pass, seasons changing, and life following its natural course. However, on a cold winter morning, Lucy received news that left her devastated. Louis, her beloved husband, had suffered a fatal accident while traveling for work to a neighboring city. Eric, now 22 years old, and Brielle, 19, were also hit with the sad news. The loss of their father left them shaken and confused, and in this whirlwind of emotions, they turned against Lucy. "This is all your fault, Mom," Eric accused, his face contorted with anger and pain. "Dad never had a life of his own. He was always trapped in your business." Brielle, though younger, agreed with her brother. "Eric is right, Mom. Dad could have pursued his own career, but he was always there supporting you. He deserved more than this." Lucy, still reeling from her husband's death, was left speechless. The accusations were unfair. Louis had always been involved in the business willingly, out of love for the family, never out of obligation. "You're wrong," Lucy finally managed to say, her voice trembling with emotion. "Your father loved what he did. He never felt trapped or unhappy. He chose this." But her words fell on deaf ears. Eric and Brielle, hurt and confused by the loss of their father, sought someone to blame and chose Lucy. As a result, they distanced themselves from their mother, further increasing Lucy's pain. She had not only lost the love of her life, but was now losing her children as well. 2 decades had passed since the fatal accident that took Louis, and the harmony of the family. Lucy, once a vibrant matriarch, had become a lonely widow. Her heart, once filled with laughter and love, was now empty, filled only by the work she tirelessly performed. Her children, Eric and Brielle, lived their lives apart from her, not caring to share special moments with Lucy, such as their weddings or the births of the grandchildren she longed to meet. Nonetheless, Lucy maintained a connection with them, sending a substantial portion of her store's profits every month. However, a single ray of light broke through the darkness that enveloped her life. Christine, Eric's eldest daughter, visited Lucy every week. The girl had a kind soul, unlike her parents. She admired Lucy and saw her as a source of inspiration, ignoring the venomous words Eric and Brielle spread about their grandmother. Despite her advanced age, Lucy was in robust health. She underwent regular checkups to ensure she would remain strong. During one of her visits to the hospital, she noticed something strange. The welcoming medical staff had been replaced. But Lucy, with her understanding nature, didn't think much of it. On a day that promised the usual tranquility, Lucy's routine was abruptly interrupted. Without any prior notice, Eric and Brielle appeared on her doorstep, wearing smiles that seemed plastered on their faces, artificial and unexpected. "Good morning, Mother," Eric began, his voice sounding oddly formal. "Brielle and I decided to make a surprise visit." Lucy, still astonished by their presence, managed to utter, "Well, what a surprise, my dears." It wasn't necessary. Before she could inquire about the reason for the visit, the door swung open again, and a team of nurses entered the room. They wore pristine white uniforms and moved with unsettling efficiency, gathering her personal belongings and preparing her for an unknown journey. "What's happening? Where are we going?" Lucy asked, the confusion deepening on her face. Brielle, maintaining her fake smile, replied, "Mom, we thought it would be best for you to move to a place where you can receive specialized care, a psychiatric hospital in the mountains. It's a beautiful place, you'll love it." But the truth was different. They were taking her to a distant, isolated place in the heart of the mountains, away from prying eyes, where Lucy would have no voice to question or fight against her children's betrayal. Eric and Brielle had plotted a cunning scheme. By bribing doctors from the new hospital team and the hospital director, they managed to have Lucy admitted to the psychiatric hospital without her knowledge or consent. In doing so, they took control of all her assets, while Lucy, betrayed by her own children, was taken away from everything she knew and loved. 2 long months had dragged on since Lucy had been deposited in that psychiatric hospital, a cold and impersonal place that bore no resemblance to the warm home she had built. That morning, however, a twist promised to change the monotonous routine. Christine, her granddaughter, who always swam against the current, appeared unexpectedly, bringing with her the fury of a whirlwind. "Grandma, I can't believe what Dad and Aunt Brielle did to you. It's unacceptable." Christine raged, the words pouring out uncontrollably. Lucy, sharing Christine's indignation, calmly requested, "Christine, my dear, I know, but we must remain calm. Nothing will be resolved with anger." Mid-conversation, the door swung open, revealing Eric and Brielle. They had discovered Christine's escape and were furious. "Christine, how dare you disobey and come here?" Brielle snarled, her voice filled with venom. "You have no right to keep her here against her will," Christine retorted, her voice vibrant with defiance. Eric advanced toward Christine, but Lucy interposed herself. "Eric, Brielle, you're too late. Christine and I have already made up our minds about what to do." The surprise on Eric and Brielle's faces was indescribable. However, Lucy and Christine were already one step ahead. They would no longer allow injustice to prevail. Lucy and Christine, despite their apparent fragility, had meticulously prepared their defense. Christine, cunning and intelligent like her grandmother, had intercepted a revealing conversation between her father and aunt, which exposed their dark plan of guardianship. The recording was the evidence they needed to expose the deceitful scheme. Just as Eric and Brielle entered the room, the previously silent television suddenly came to life. Familiar voices filled the space, echoing through the hospital speakers. It was the audio of that incriminating conversation, the irrefutable proof of Eric and Brielle's betrayal. "Just think about it, Brielle. Once Lucy is declared incompetent, her entire empire will be ours." Eric's voice resonated through the speakers, followed by Brielle's complicit laughter. Soon, several audios featuring doctors, directors, and nurses started playing, further confirming the entire scheme and the bribes orchestrated by the siblings. The faces of the siblings grew pale as they heard their own words being broadcasted. They looked around, seeking an escape, but the trap had already closed. The door swung open once again, this time revealing the imposing figures of two police officers. Eric and Brielle Johnson, one of them asked, looking at a sheet of paper in his hands, "You are under arrest for conspiracy and attempted fraud." The room fell into a shocking silence, broken only by Brielle's sobs and Eric's protests. Lucy and Christine finally could breathe a sigh of relief. Justice had been served. Lucy, observing her children in handcuffs, felt a sharp pain pierce her heart. The scene was brutally sad but necessary. Eric and Brielle needed to learn a lesson, and sometimes the harshest lessons are the most impactful. She stepped forward, her gaze blending immense sadness with the determination of a warrior, and said, "I have loved you since the moment you were born, and I will always love you. But the love I have for you doesn't blind me to your flaws. You needed to learn, and I hope from the bottom of my heart that this is the lesson you needed." Lucy's story, which unfolded from a humble farm in Nebraska to the glittering lights of New York City, was a saga of epic proportions. Her journey was marked by love and betrayal, by staggering successes and devastating losses. She proved to the world that even in the face of the harshest adversity, the strength to resist and overcome can be found within us. Lucy, the country girl who became an acclaimed fashion designer, was more than just a famous name in the fashion industry. She became a symbol of resilience and determination. And now, with Christine, her granddaughter and protege by her side, Lucy's story was destined to continue. Even in the midst of adversity, Lucy never ceased to look towards the future, and that was her greatest strength. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.